Hi, Oscar. Hi, TORD. So happy to...
I'm Oscar. I'm the one with this voice. And
That means TORD is the one with the other voice.
yeah, I'm the one with the other voice. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm actually doing both.
Oh my God, guys. First feature film. This is a winner. This is a good one.
Thank you.
I love this film. You've got a couple real jump scares happening here. You've got impeccable casting with in your three main roles, particularly with the character of Lucas, Eddie Erickson Dominguez. He just steals your heart. Steals your heart. You could have kept the camera on him the whole film. But your cinematography, your visual tonal bandwidth, and your visual construction with distinct temperature and color differentials between not only the house next door and Lucas's house, but also when Fredrik comes in and out of the picture and in and out of the house. Whenever I notice that it's typically it's duller, it's blander when it's just Shirin and Lucas. But when Fredrik is there and it's the three of them like a family, you brighten it up. There's some yellow tones. You've got sun coming through a window. So you have these three very distinct looks, and they're fabulous and speak volumes.
Thank you. We spent a lot of time. Yeah, as it happens, the sun was shining those days when Fredrik was at the house. No, but it's just everything is so purposefully done and planned because we didn't have that much money, so we had to do insane amounts of planning instead.
Well, all your planning certainly paid off because you really take the individual concerns of each of our three principals, their own internal dramas, and those internal dramas are being exacerbated into horror, and you do it so subtly, but it works so well. Where did you even begin with this story and in planning it out?
I mean, the inspiration for the story came from actual events that took place up north in Sweden, allegedly took place. We spoke to a family and they seemed like really ordinary people, and something really strange and scary happened to them. So we took inspiration from what they told us. And then we also wanted to make just a modern haunted house story that took place in Swedish suburbia, and telling this story about a family and the stepmother and having this, as you say, Eddie, because we love Eddie, and he was so great, but he was only 5 years old.
Wow.
And we wanted that because we wanted, and everyone told us you cannot work with a child who is 5 years old. This is endangering the making of the whole movie because you only have 25 days shooting the movie, and he's going to be on set for 23 of those days. And he's 5 years old. Anything can happen. But when we met him and when we started rehearsing with him, we felt like we need him because this story needs, he needs to be this tiny because that's going to make impact on the audience. And if we cast a 8 or 7-year-old kid who tries to play a younger kid, that's going to ring false to the audience. So we went out of our way to get Eddie into the movie against everyone's will, but it really paid off because I think like that feels so genuine having him in the movie.
Well, and when you're 5 years old, you're also more inclined to have a quote unquote an imaginary friend who
Yeah.
you like and who wants to play with you, and you tell everybody, and they think it. Oh yeah, that's cute. He has an imaginary friend. And you really need a child of 5 or so who has that innocence and naivete to pull that
Yeah,
off.
exactly.
And Eddie does that so beautifully here. There's never a moment that you do not believe him. And
Yeah.
of course, then we get to see, is this an image? Is it a phantom? Is this in his mind that's playing out? You give us so much visually to play on that. That you as you're trying to think through what's happening, we could go in multiple directions, and then you take us on a ride. You get us to that third act, and then it's no holds barred. You guys take us on the ride of our lives.
Thank you. Yeah, we really wanted to switch things up. Like in a horror film, it's horror all the time, and in most films, it's like the third act is confrontation and fight all the way. And so we try to push that and like make things even worse before we start getting to some sort of ending, and like save also like punches horror wise for that.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what we wanted, like a twist, and that turns up the bar to 200%, and then it gets even worse. So, because sometimes they drop off instead, horror films. And so we were scared of that. So we really planned for that.
Well, I think...
And also, like, we wanted it to be about them. Like, it had to be about her and that kid, and her for the first time being able to say things,
Mm-hmm.
and singing that song that originated from his mother. And it's a very well-known song in Swedish, a bedtime song, and just making that moment for them, and him coming back to life from her love, and hopefully not being too cheesy, because for us that was in the end what it was all about.
Well, at the core, and I think this is what makes this film succeed, at its core, you have a family drama here. You have a family drama that circumstances become horrific, as opposed to plopping a family down in a horror film. It's their own demons, their own inner demons that promulgate the horror aspect and really cause it to take shape. Because if you didn't have a little 5-year-old boy, you wouldn't have any kind of problem with the house next door, I don't think.
No.
So that's where you really excel. So when we get that horror, when we go full bore, that you really, it is, you're at 200% when you pull that off. And it's just so fabulous to watch that. And when we're under the house in that third act, what Henrik does with the lighting down there is just gorgeous. Really gorgeous, with the negative space and with the, the spot, the singular light source. Just wonderful.
That was an extremely hard thing to shoot, actually. Yeah, you can, Oscar, say.
Yeah, it's the what's it called? The woodworking, the metalworking part of the studio that we had to use, because we have such a low budget that we had to use those spaces too, and we lugged those concrete things in there and filled it with sand, and it's not an inch more than you can see. So we shot it from all possible angles to get all that stuff, and it wasn't really that big. And
actually, we had there was an idea of how to light the scenes, and me and Oscar saw that, and then we were like, no, this is not the way we envisioned it. So we spent the entire weekend building our own practicals, and in the end, those lights were the ones that were used for lighting all the scenes under the house.
Wow.
And we built them just the day before starting shooting those scenes.
From like scratch.
From scratch. And it came out great. And it was just done in a like last minute panic way. But it came out great. So
It looks fabulous. Talk to me about your sound design. Your sound design is such a big part of this film. Your sound design and also melded with Jonas's score. But your sound design, the way you use the subtlety of whispers through a wall or knocking, you're giving great nods to prior films that have come before with these kind of themes. But we get to bone cracking of the boogeyman. The only other film I've ever heard it used this well was in Come Play last year, by a first time American filmmaker. So talk to me about coming up with this sound design and the nuance of it, because it is very, very nuanced to keep us on our toes and paying attention, much like Shirin. She's listening all the time, and so are we.
I mean, I think both me and Oscar really knew what we wanted, and we were so inspired by a lot of great American films. But the thing in Sweden is that we don't have that much experience of doing horror films or sound design for horror films. So we really had to start from the beginning, like trying everything out. And we spent so much time testing stuff at our home, both me and Oscar working, sitting in the studio, and for weeks and weeks and weeks, along with the sound designer, guided in a way by Jonas' music as an inspiration, and then taking that, when do we use silence? How loud should it be? What kind of sound effect or design? So much work went into that, and I mean, we were so glad because in the Swedish Film Awards we were awarded with Best Sound Design, and that made us so happy because we had spent months on designing the sound for this movie. Yeah.
Like the final thing that we did last was everything was gruesome, but this was even more gruesome. And I think we were in a way naive that we could translate what we wanted in talking with someone and that they would understand. But it wasn't as simple because apparently a real bone cracking, it doesn't sound like a bone cracking, it sounds like a toothpick cracking. So we had basic ideas, and then we did, I'd say we mainly did reacting. Like we did it over and over again and learning and moved things, and the cracking sounds they're different, and there are so many things that you would never think, and like it was very fun, but also very, very hard at the same time.
That was us picking elements and combining those and spending.
Recording own elements. Adding
just for the crunching stuff.
It was a long process, but it was fun and really rewarding. And we didn't give up.
And before starting that, I was like, just add the bone crunching sound effects.
Yeah. You know,
turned out there were none. So we
bone crunching, don't wave, just add that. And it wasn't the way you did that.
Because pacing is so important, how challenging was your editing process on this film? Because you're keeping everything, you're building everything, you're focusing on the family, and not really getting into the jump scare horror aspect until the third act. So how challenging was it to find that pacing to keep the flow going as we approach the horror?
I think we did it in the same way, like reacting, but on those things we foresaw that would be a thing. So we actually used temp music that was really early, but in the right tempo, playing like in a separate channel on the headphones system that we had so we could react actually when shooting it, so we could keep a consistent tempo that was in that order that it was supposed to be. So and that worked to a degree, I'd say. It really affected how we did things, because just like you said, keeping everything else in our heads, and then it was a real risk of shooting things too fast, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Not too slow, but and then to have that music, it was actually a loop that got you crazy after a week, because it was the same over and over. But that many times that like janked you into that tempo, and then we understood that this is too quick. We have to do this in a slightly slower fashion, and like it's just reacting. When it worked, it worked, and otherwise we had to change that. So that we foresaw that thing, that problem, I think, in a way. But of course, it was as editing goes, it's always horrible, I think.
Well, I've got.
The first version is horrible to watch. You like, it's over. This is never going to be a film, and I'm an idiot. And why are we such morons doing this?
I'm curious, what was your learning curve like jumping from television episodes to a feature film? What did you learn that you can now take forward into future films, which I hope you're going to direct some more, because you're very good at it?
I think I don't even know where to begin, but you learned so much, and when you learned it, we tried to apply it immediately. But I mean, there's so much stuff. But I mean, the difference between TV and film, I think we did it in the same way. We did TV stuff together before, and now I think more or less we did now what we wanted to do before, but didn't have the time and money, I think. But it's just, and like, to plan and to,
for me, the biggest lesson is, if you have a problem in the script, that problem is going to stick with you during the entire shoot and then in the editing process. And if you don't watch out for it, it's going to be in the final film. So, I mean, solve problems in the script.
Yeah.
That's the easiest and least expensive way to solve problems. I think that's the most...
I'd say if it's something is slightly bothersome in the script, it'll come back and be a problem. Yeah, exactly. As far as that, even.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. This has been a joy talking to you guys about The Evil Next Door. I can't wait to see your next film.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.